Greetings, brothers and sisters in Christ. We come to the wonderful holy season of Lent. And today, the first Sunday of Lent, our first reading takes us all the way back to the book of Genesis, to the strange story of Noah and the ark. In a sense, this is spiritual basics. So the church wants us to get back and get ordered into a spiritual life that is directed properly to God. So we remember that at creation, the first chapter of Genesis, if you will, that God ordered and created the whole world. He brought everything into order out of chaos, and at the end of creation, he created us, man and woman. And so in a sense, like a liturgical procession, the last ones in kind of are the ones who are honored. God is honoring us by creating us at the end of creation. And then God created us to be friends with God, to be in communion with God. We say that we come from communion and we are going to communion. That's our identity. A lack of communion with God is what has haunted us our whole life. And so we desire communion with God, and the church is here to bring us back to communion. So we literally receive Holy Communion when we come to Mass. So we find that what went wrong then, our sin, right? So our sin led us away from communion with God. Our sin broke that communion somehow. The result of sin is an undoing of creation. So it's the opposite of what God intended for us. God intended for us to be one, and we got separated from that somehow. We know that at the beginning of creation, God's Spirit hovered over the waters of chaos. So for the ancient Israelites, water is a place of fear. They would not go out onto the ocean. There's a sense of we don't know what's under there and we don't have control over that. So they would be afraid of it. And so now we go back to Noah and the ark. A great flood comes. Again, the whole earth is covered with water, if you will. So this is, again, not divine anger at us. God is not punishing us. This is a result of our sin. It's a result of our own walking away from what God has offered to us. When you walk away from what God offered, the world feels chaotic. It feels like we're not in control somehow, and we are afraid, devastated, if you will. So what does God do in response to that? What does God always do? God sends a rescue operation, if you will. God tirelessly strives to bring order back and to bring us back so that we can see God face to face, if you will. So God found a righteous man named Noah, and he gave him a task to build an ark which would carry, if you will, the whole of creation again. Now, Noah building an ark in the middle of a desert had to face much criticism, mockery, laughter. That's what happens when you follow the will of God in a world that is broken from God. So when you decide to follow God, the world's not going to understand everything. In fact, the world might mock you and make fun of you. The goal is to continue to do what God strives and what God asks of you. We know that the ark carried all of creation and was a sign of a covenant for us again, one of the ways that God brings us back. So I invite you during Lent to come to Mass, receive Holy Communion, remember who you are. Then we will know the great joy and the wonder of God in our midst. Have a blessed Lent.